it was something that terrified me, but I just had to do.
Congratulations. What a riveting show. I cannot take my eyes off of it. You're breaking the stereotype of this 50s idyllic neighborhood in Los Angeles, and you're just taking a sledgehammer to it and bam, which is so refreshing. Even the neighbor's name is Betty. I don't know if I can talk to Allison Pill because I'm so upset at her, but she's so good in it.
A common reaction. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, everyone all around. So where'd you get the idea? Because we've heard of white flight.
Yeah.
But we didn't hear about the Great Migration. I always thought to myself, like, why didn't people leave the South? I mean, if it was because of the Jim Crow, but it wasn't any better on the West Coast.
That was the thing. Listen, I consider myself sort of a student of history. I love history. I love American history. I find it endlessly fascinating. But even I had that journey when I was digging in and researching. I know so much about the South, but I knew very, very little about what Black folks experienced as they migrated to cities of the East and the West and the North. And the fact that they were experiencing most of the same terror tactics, the fear mongering, the hatred, the rage that they experienced in the South, but in the cities, suburbs outside of Chicago and Lansing and Levittown, Pennsylvania, and Rosedale, New York, and Los Angeles. That to me was endlessly fascinating. Yeah.
And where did you find that? But where did you find that in history? Because how did you find about these scare tactics that they used in the South and they used on the West and the East?
I mean, sadly, by reading a ton of books. I mean, everything. Yeah, I mean, anything from Warmth of Other Suns. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of books that will tell you the lore. And even digging in on Los Angeles history, Nat King Cole, his family, when they moved into Hancock Park in the late 40s, they dealt with much of these same exact tactics that the Emorys experience in Compton. So the sad part is I could have put this exact same story anywhere across the country and it would have worked.
One of the interesting things that I thought about while filming is that I think that a lot of Black people at that time thought the same way, right? They were living in the South and they thought that there would be a better life, a more safe life in the North, Midwest, out West. I mean, that's why the Emorys go out West, because they think that, this will be better for us. And the sad thing, the heartbreaking thing is that the Emorys quickly realized that, there really isn't anywhere that safe. You know what I mean? And I think that unfortunately, a lot of people in that time realized the same thing.
I think that when people think the 50s in America specifically, that it is called the good old days. But I think there's a reason that it's called the good old days, and it wasn't good for everyone. It wasn't good in the same ways. And even when it was so-called good, it was because somebody was being very bad. So it's a really interesting journey into that space and that time. And, it's, I think, very compelling. And my hope is that the people who need to see this and need to know will be so compelled that they will continue watching and that they will be able to draw the parallels from what we think of as a time capsule to right now, today.
Wonderful performance, you guys. I am sitting there watching it, rooting for you guys. I watched all 4 episodes. I can't take my eyes off the screen. You guys are just fabulous in this show. Now tell me what it's like being part of this show, which shows how ugly it was for Black Americans on the West Coast. I mean, I grew up here in LA, so getting to know this history is like, it's really heartbreaking.
Yeah, it was both taxing and terrifying and hard, but also fulfilling at the same time. Because I think coming onto this, I knew that this was important. This story was powerful and it needed to be told. Unfortunately, it's timely. And a lot of people who grew up right here in LA don't know this history and don't know, and Little Marvin said this a few times, that the unfortunate thing is that this story could have taken place anywhere in America, to be honest with you. And that's a sad thing. So it was something that terrified me, but I just had to do.
And Ashley, for you? What was it like shooting some of these scenes?
Yeah, it was tough shooting some of these scenes. Not as tough as it was for the people, our people at the time. So for me, it was just important that this story is told. You know, it's Black American history, which is ultimately American history. And what it said was that, you know, nowhere in America was safe for Black people at that time, whether that be in the Jim Crow South, whether that be on the West Coast, or whether it be in New York. In the 50s, it wasn't safe. And, you know, I'm from the UK, but there are experiences and stories that I've heard that have happened in the UK in the 50s as well. So I just think, you know, there's been a time in the world where being Black was super, like, really hard. And, you know, it's what is really sad is that, you know, 60 years later, that is still the case in a lot of places, that, you know, some places just not safe for Black people.
Yeah, this whole show just breaks the stereotypes of the 50s housewife, because it's so opposite of what we're used to seeing with all these 50s sitcoms on Leave It to Beaver. And this one just takes a sledgehammer to it, right?
Yeah.
How I think a lot of people got away with doing all these things under the table, because the portrayal was that, you know, that everything's peachy, but really it's not. And I think in this age of information, we're kind of seeing that, whoa, wait a minute, you know what I mean? Like, that's the truth of that situation, and that's the truth of what happened over there. So it was just interesting.
And the acknowledgement of it as well, right? So like, that's what I think we want as people, that no, these things happened, like, and people need to acknowledge it and make sure, and we need to make sure that we say it all the time so that it never happens again, because that is the easiest way for things to repeat, right? If we forget that it happened.
Yeah, I mean, it almost makes you, I was very angry watching it, because in the history books, they don't teach you these things. You knew about the Jim Crow South, but you didn't know about everything else. And I think if it's taught in school, I think more people would have would be more sympathetic and acknowledge like the history of America, right?
Yeah, and that's what I would like people to take away from the show, you know, that to be more sympathetic and more empathetic towards what's happened to us, so that there's more understanding, so that we can live harmoniously together in the community.